Awesome, thank you.
Hmm.
So again, very excited to be here and share with you InDesign. Not sure, it seems like everyone's relatively new to the concept of InDesign. Photoshop is a product that everyone hears about. Illustrator, more so if you are on the graphic design side, if you're doing art. But InDesign is actually, to your point, Max, it's very versatile, not only for creatives, but versatile across the industry, regardless of what type of outputs you're creating. And so I just want to start off by just kind of orienting ourselves with regard to where InDesign fits into the larger ecosystem of creating amazing, beautiful content, if you will. Photoshop is really great with manipulating photos, images, right? You can heal, you can touch up images, you can use rasters, JPEGs, and modify them. Illustrator is really good with working with scalable vectors and lines. So if you're on campus and you're creating t-shirts, for instance, for your clubs, they're not a lot of times won't take just something that's like a photograph, right? They will take things that are SVG formats or EPS formats, things that can be screen printed. So that all requires vectors and scalable lines. Where InDesign fits in is the final piece. It's if you're looking to create layouts, and what I mean by layouts are if you are running an organization and you're creating like a brochure that has multiple pages, that has spreads, that uses a lot of type, Photoshop and Illustrator is not an ideal way to go about it because if you have multiple pages, you're going to have a really huge document, and a lot of the work is really manual. And so that's where InDesign comes in. InDesign is really good at helping you lay out all your content across multiple pages, whether it's a digital PDF or a printed piece that goes to pre-production. And you'll see textual layout. I'll show you this a little bit later today. A lot of the things that you can do in InDesign helps you automate a lot of the placements of content in a document. So you don't have to manually cut and paste and redo things over and over and over and over again. So InDesign is used across the industry for magazines, books, technical papers, white papers, book reports, etc. But it's also used in a very nice, fun, personal way too. So I use InDesign just recently to create my son's kind of invitation card, right? So it's a really fun way to just do things on the side as well. You don't really need to use it for really huge productions like magazines. So feel free to interrupt me anytime, but I'm going to jump into just a quick demo. I'm going to show you three different use cases, and they will all highlight something unique about the functionality of InDesign so that you can apply it back to your daily jobs back on campus. All right, let me know if you guys see my screen right now. Feel free to interrupt anytime. Okay, so one of the first things is InDesign is just a layout tool, right? Layout tool meaning that if you have images, whether it is a photograph or like some sort of illustration like the sun, or just really basic text or graphics, you can place it in this layout tool. And what's really good about InDesign that's unique about from Illustrator or Photoshop is you'll notice the first thing is like there's guides, right? It feels almost like a word processor, but it's more advanced than word processor in a sense that now you have more flexibility than Word or Google Docs to be able to make your content look professional. Okay, so you have guides, you can place different additional guides where you can put bounds, right? If you have a specific setting, specific look and feel that you're going towards. And the other thing that's really powerful about InDesign is, look, if you have these images, right, it's very simple to copy and paste, place it in, right, move things around. Nothing groundbreaking, right? You can draw text boxes. I'm going over to my left-hand side. You have the type tool. You can draw text boxes, insert text from your documents, right? Again, nothing groundbreaking. But what's interesting is the next step is if you want to start laying out really complex long documents, InDesign has a really powerful type functionality. that allows you to take your work to the next step. So one of the first things that's really useful when I started using InDesign is just using filling with placeholder text, right? So you can start designing your layouts without actually having content. So you can start laying them out, seeing how they look, and making it look relevant for your content, right? Additionally, InDesign is really about type, right? So if I created a text box, now I can go over to right-hand side. You'll notice that we have what we call a character panel. InDesign has you have a live character panel, so you can actually see how type looks and displays in your document, right? Not too groundbreaking, but the key part that's really exciting is InDesign is integrated directly with our Adobe font library. So there are more than 17,000 fonts directly in here. And these fonts that are included in InDesign are not just like your typical free fonts that you can go online and find, where the fonts are sometimes low quality. These are really high quality fonts, all sourced from professional foundries, font foundries. So they are really high quality, and all of this is accessible to you. You can preview all the 17,000 fonts. And what's really nice is if you want to use something, you can activate it. It'll sync it directly to your local system, and you can use it. One final shout out for this is if you, let's say I'm using Adorn Roman, I just selected that font. This font now, once it's activated in InDesign, is activated across all of your apps on your computer, right? So if you're using the Microsoft Office, or if you are using anything that has a character panel or like a drop-down menu for fonts, you'll see that font everywhere on your computer. So I think that's a really powerful thing. The other thing about InDesign that you should know about is there are, unlike the other tools, like more generic word processing tools, you have unprecedented ability to customize the look of type so it flows, right? So one of the key aspects of creating a good piece is making sure that your content is readable, that it flows very well. And you have the ability to modify a lot of different aspects that you don't have with a word processor, right? So you can deal with leading and kerning, and just getting it precisely look how you want it to look, right? So these are all the options that I would encourage you to play with. With variable fonts, what I wanted to show you is when you use InDesign, explore fonts that have a name that calls a variable, right? So it's minion variable, acumen variable. These fonts have additional options for you to infinitely change how italicized it is, how bold it is, and so that you have not just one or two settings, you have infinite settings. Okay. I'm gonna pause there, and before I jump on to kind of some of the automation workflows, so you can learn how to create things better and faster. Let me know if you have any questions before I move on. Fantastic. Okay, so now, I mean, I showed you kind of really basics, right? So you can use guides, you can place images, you can, change your font. But you might be asking, well, what's so unique about InDesign, and why should I use InDesign versus using, like, say, Photoshop, if you guys have used Photoshop before? So InDesign really allows you to scale a lot of the content that you're creating. And one example is if you're creating a piece with a lot of type, and a lot of times your text has different styles repeated over a long document, multiple pages. In Photoshop, if you want to change the style of your text, you would have to go through every single text box and every single page and modify it. What's really key about InDesign is the ability to take something like this, where I have just like a really basic body of text here, and I can apply styles to it, right? So if I select headline text, I can go to the right-hand side under text style. They're what we call paragraph styles, right? So you can start defining styles for all of your copy, right? So right now I have the headline and I have body, and now you see I can replicate this across a whole document, right? So it's really scalable. But what's also really good about InDesign is you can start customizing all your body text, right? So let's say right here, I have a body that I want to do like a drop cap. I want to do a drop cap effect. I can go to the text style and look for a style that is body first, and it has a drop cap, right? So you'll notice that anytime I apply this style to any of my paragraphs, I'll just add a drop cap to all my paragraphs, right? So you don't have to manually go in and select the E or select the G and add a drop cap. You can do a lot of different things. You can add drop caps, you can change the ligatures, you can do a lot of really interesting things. And what's great about styles is once you have defined the style, you can always go back to the top. So I'm going to the top right here under my properties panel, and you'll see that there's an option for me to manage my styles, right? So I have all these different paragraph styles, and once I modify like my drop cap, right? I can select the number of characters I want to have in my drop caps. Let me see if I can show you how this scales. Let me close this again. This is covering my example here. So if I go back here, and now like if I want to change my drop caps, I can update that, and you'll see it just preview across my whole document. I can do a lot of different things. I can change like basic character format, leading, tracking, positioning, kerning, right? So I can start updating my fonts across. I can also start doing kind of nested styles. So there's like different ways that I can start modifying my drop caps. And there's also ways for me to make sure that my sentences don't have what we call widows, right? So if I have one word at the end of a paragraph that starts bleeding over to the next paragraph, and it creates like this awkward space, I can look at keep options to remove that additional space. So there's a lot of really advanced typographic options in InDesign that you can apply to all of your work. Okay, and so to play with this and learn how to use this is really easy. Just go over to select a text box, and then you can see you can create different paragraph styles, right? New style. And then you can just apply that style across in your document, okay? The other thing I want to call out is, so yes, there's a lot of advanced ways that you can use styles to apply consistent look and feel and type in your copy across your whole document. But there's also really advanced ways within InDesign that you can start framing and placing images. So one of the things is right now I have this image that I placed from stock, right? You can crop it based on just by moving it around. But what's also very nice is that let's say if you're creating a photo book or a collage, and you have 100 different pictures, right? If you have 100 different pictures, it's going to be a lot of different content to try to frame. Imagine these are all different pictures. But if you want to reframe it in different ways, like you're going to have to do this manually in any of the programs that you use today, right? Photoshop, Illustrator, or even Google Slides, etc. You're going to have to crop it in a certain way. But what InDesign allows you to do, because it's used by a lot of magazines, big publications that have just hundreds of pages of images and photographs, there are automated ways that, let's say if I select an image here, I go to down on the bottom right-hand side, there are automated ways that allow you to fit content into these different frames, right? So that it is easy, so you don't have to think about it, right? They'll either scale it proportionally or I'll scale it based on kind of different options. But what's really interesting is we've taken it to the next step. There's a new function called content-aware fit, right? And content-aware fit uses a form of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and it uses computer vision to look at, analyze any photos that you place in InDesign and looks for the focal point. And then once you use it, it recenters the image based on the focal point of the content. So if you are creating a magazine or a photo book that has just hundreds and hundreds of images, and you want them all to be cropped a certain way, this is a good function to use because it just automates a lot of that. It gets you the majority of the way there, but then you can also you can do some manual edits of it, so you don't have to start from scratch. Okay. The final thing that I wanted to show you is within InDesign, it is really powerful for not only like playing with text and modifying images, but it's also very powerful in creating books. And why people create books in InDesign versus like Photoshop or Illustrator is the fact that it automates the placement of long documents. Let's say that I have this book, this first chapter, Alice in Wonderland. And I have like this long content in Microsoft Word, right? So I have the first chapter in Microsoft Word. You know, how I would normally do this in any other documents is I just copy and paste and place it into here. But one of the challenges, like, what if I copy and paste this content here? What happens to the other pages, right? Do I have to add another page? Add another page, and then like keep on cutting and pasting. It's not very scalable, if you can imagine that, right? So I keep on cutting and pasting. I have to make sure I select the right body of text to cut and paste. So it's not a very automated way of doing that. What InDesign allows you to do is, let me show you a different way, right? InDesign allows you to just essentially take that same Word document, so File, Place, and it allows you to automatically scale all those pages into a book form, right? So all that long document from that Word doc is now flowed automatically across these different pages. And you may be asking, well, how do you define what the pages look like and what the content looks like? So in InDesign, you have under pages, you have different templates. You can create like a master template, you can create a title page template, and that content automatically flows through all the different the templates that you define. Okay. And one thing that's really neat that I wanted to add is, let's say you have this content here, and you want to add some images to it. InDesign allows you to do that very easily, right? So if I place an image, I can go in, select image I want to place. I have this graphic from Alice in Wonderland that I can place directly on here, right? So one thing I can do is, I'm going to go back to selection. I can go up here and I can kind of change my text frame so that I make room for the graphic. But what's nice about InDesign is you don't really have to do that as well. For any graphic that you place, you can define text wrap, right? So you go on the right-hand side and you can define the text wrap. You can move it around anywhere on your graphic. It doesn't impact anything. And you'll notice that the content automatically reflows, right? So I move up and down, the content where all the text reflows in all the other pages. So it doesn't really matter how I design my page, the content flows around it. What's also really interesting is if you have a design like this, there's also options to use really interesting effects, right? So what if I just want the text to flow around this rabbit and not be encumbered by this frame, this rectangle frame around it, right? So I can go on Object, Clipping Path, and there's options to detect edges, right? So it detects the edges of my content. And so what happens now is I can go back and reflow my text based on this image. And I'll just move around based on wherever I place it. Right, so now it reflows around my rabbit. I don't have to worry about. Now I have a very a nice style with this as well.
They're doing construction.
Oh, I was like, sorry. InDesign's making a lot of noises here.
Wow, they're moving construction. Sorry about that.
No worries. But look, so you've got images that you can place, and you can have it flow around text. So just really in summary, right? Very get-go. InDesign is just a place like you create a document, let's say an 8.5 by 11 document. You can place content, place images, place text. You have unprecedented, hopefully you guys can hear all the hammering over there. But you have unprecedented ability to use the vast collection of fonts within the Creative Cloud. So there's more than 17,000 fonts that you can sync. And you have unprecedented kind of professional level control of typography, right? So you have a lot of different paragraph styles, bullets, and numbering, so you can control it to finite details. And all of this is discoverable on the right side. And this is what we call the properties panel. And if you're creating documents that have a lot of text, a lot of times you don't want to cut and paste. You don't want to redo a lot of the styles, right? So you can go and you can leverage paragraph styles to apply effects on text across your document without having to manually do it one by one. Then finally, if you are creating extremely long documents like books, you can place documents like a whole manuscript and have it flow across your InDesign documents based on the templates that you create. And what's really nice is any image that you place in InDesign, it automatically flows with the text in your document. So nothing is manual. So everything just flows naturally. So with that, I mean, that's a really high level view of all the things that you can potentially do with InDesign. I can see this applying very well with periodicals that you're creating on campus. So think of newspapers. You can see text reflowing in newspapers. You can think of publications, magazines, to also very simple, like in the very beginning here, simple one-pagers, right? So if you're creating simple pamphlets, simple brochures, flyers, postcards, InDesign is a really straightforward way to be able to lay out and make content look professional.
And you can also, just like all the other tools, it's interchangeable. You could use a Photoshop file and throw it from Photoshop, copy and paste it in here, right?
Exactly, yes.
With Illustrator and XD, I believe, too. So you can use other tools with this to support it. So let's say you're trying to make a flyer, you want to use vector design, you're using Illustrator to draw it. You can even start with an iPad, do Adobe Illustrator draw something on the iPad, save it on the cloud, open up Illustrator, do some additional vector work, and then copy that and put it into your flyer brochure on InDesign. So it's a full-on ecosystem, and like Wayne discussed in the beginning, this is a great way to make a multi-page layout. Photoshop is mainly to make editing of what did you say, creative imaging?
Rasters, like rasters, photos, images, JPEGs.
Yeah, and then Illustrator is illustrations and vector design.
Yeah, you have EPS files, SVG files, Illustrator is great, JPEG files, Photoshop is great, PNG is Photoshop. Here, this is like if you want to create printed documents, PDFs, InDesign is a great output for that.
Yeah, and I remember so you guys asked in the question before, what is the relevant use cases, or how can I pretty much present this to students on campus in a relevant way to them? I'd say one of the top things in my mind right now is resume design. If you want to make a beautiful looking resume, InDesign is your best friend. I used it to create mine. A lot of the reps, if in our program, use it to create theirs. You can also find there's templates that you could actually use. You could actually use these templates when you do workshops. For example, you can go into one of them, whether it's resume layout, magazine layout, fashion, whatever it is. you can actually use these as a template from the start and then work from it. Again, I'd recommend you to play around with all the stuff that Wayne taught you. Even though it's a template, you still want to be able to modify, change, and show people these different functions. Um, but yeah, before you kind of start, always look at the document, play around with it, and feel free to use any of the layouts and any other stuff that's preset already to save you some time to teach.
These are great places to learn too. Like I just pulled up the resume template. So all you need to do to find them is go File, New, then Document. Oh, yeah, and then you'll see it. Just look for it. It takes a little bit to load, but you can find it under Print. These are all there's a lot of templates here. Great place to start because it has a lot of things that you can start moving around, playing with, and they've created a lot of character styles for you already. So you'll be able to pick up really quickly by starting from here.
That's great.